Hello and welcome. I'm Luminara Serdar with Autism Transformed, founder of this company and clinic where I help kids to have better calm connection and communication. And I do that through getting to the root causes of what's creating autism, what's contributing to the symptoms of autism. And we look at gut, brain inflammation, and lots of biochemistry, what's going on in the body. And today, what I wanted to talk about is why ABA and speech therapy are not enough for a child with autism. My understanding is you go to your pediatrician and they say, oh, your child has autism. Here's a prescription for ABA therapy, which is applied behavioral analysis. So it's behavior therapy. Why isn't that enough? And then additionally, if our kids aren't speaking or they're delayed in their speech development, we say, here's go do speech therapy. And my understanding is a lot of insurance will cover ABA and speech therapy. So that's where we're guided and what we're told to do as parents with a child who's diagnosed with autism. And some of the schools, depending on your district, your city, your county, your state, will provide these services, which is wonderful. But why it's not enough is because when you are working with a behavior for a child, let's say we're working on trying to get them to say yes or no appropriately. In order to do that, that's a complex cognitive issue in the brain. And if we've got brain inflammation and likely gut inflammation, so all of our kids with autism have brain inflammation, there is something in the brain creating a fiery, inflamed response, which we do not want in there. We don't want it in there because it prevents the neurons from connecting. It prevents speech. It prevents eye contact. It prevents all kinds of things. So when we're doing ABA therapy on top of an inflamed brain the neurons aren't connecting properly, and so it's not doing what the brain needs to do, and you're working over that, on top of that. What we need to do is figure out what's inflaming the brain. How can we bring this inflammation down? Now, there's lots of ways to do that, which I can get into in a minute, but this is why I feel ABA therapy is not enough for a child with autism, because we're not really getting at the root of what's causing the problem. It's a little bit like putting a roof on a house before you have all the walls completed or all the electricity in there or even the foundation in the house. We don't want to put the roof on a house and have the walls collapse. So this is a little bit like ABA and speech. We're trying to get the brain to work better and the neurons to connect, but there's there's hurdles that don't allow the neurons to connect. So while the thought of behavior therapy and doing the same thing, moving your arm in a certain way, writing trying to write in a certain way, or hold a pencil or hold a spoon is great. I love that idea. If the brain doesn't have the tools, isn't capable, it's like you're pushing a boulder uphill continually. So it can be very frustrating for a child when they're not getting it. It can be very frustrating if let's say I've heard of children who are nonverbal and the two therapists are sitting talking, like, he's not getting it. He completely doesn't understand. And yet inside he knows, he is hearing, he's understanding, he just can't communicate. Hey, my hand's not working properly, or I just can't do this, or I'm feeling this, or I'm feeling that. So the first thing I would love for anyone as a parent, you as a parent, to think about with your child with autism is, presume competence. Presume that they actually do understand, that they do know things. We've heard many, many stories of kids with autism who later learn how to write, learn how to use a communication device, and they're super brilliant. They're writing poetry. They're really smart. So let's first of all presume competence. If your child can't actually do the thing that you want them to do or speak, it doesn't mean that they don't understand that that's what's desired of them. I think there's a lot more understanding than maybe therapists or other teachers perhaps give kids credit for. And so, again, I want to say that ABA therapy is so like a little putting the cart before the horse. I guess that's an old expression. And what we want to do instead is ask the question, why is the brain inflamed? What's creating this? And usually inflammatory chemicals are things like heavy metals or pesticides. Oh, we find a lot of aluminum. I just learned from a conference that arsenic is really prevalent in not just rice, but chicken. I had no idea. Dr. Joe Pizzorno, who has studied arsenic and gave an in-depth presentation about it. It's in our water, it's in our food, and we're probably eating it, and it's not great for us. So these heavy metals, these other compounds that are creating brain inflammation, we need to get them out of the brain, and we need to stop the inflammatory process. And one of the first ways to do that is by helping the gut. We have to look at what we feed our children, and we have to, let's not feed them chicken laced with arsenic or rice laced with arsenic or any of the fast foods that have been found to have cadmium and lead and mercury in them based on recent studies. So we have to start with a really clean diet, as organic as possible, and we likely need supplements. I was at a conference and I was listening to all these professionals saying how I think we'd have to eat 8 oranges today to equal 1 orange of 50 years ago to get the proper nutrients. Our nutrients are depleted our food is depleted in nutrients, so we're not getting the vitamins and minerals that we had from the soil even 50 years ago. So I think it is important to supplement with things like magnesium, which is very important for 300 biochemicals and the biochemical reactions in the body. It's important to supplement with B vitamins because our kids probably aren't getting them in foods, and how many of our kids are eating vegetables anyway. We need to shift that. So our first thing to do about brain inflammation is to assess. You can do diagnostic tests and assess what toxins are in the body. You can do, most doctors will look for inflammatory markers and for immune system function, so we need to look at that. And then once we find out what's in there, we want to pull it out with the right compounds. There are binders that can travel throughout the body and pull out heavy metals. You guys might have heard of zeolite or citrus pectin. I love the Cellcore binders because they actually travel through the body and grab various things and actually pull them all the way out of the body. You might have heard of the Andy-Cutler chelation process, which is cumbersome, and you have to give your child something every 4 hours, alpha-lipoic acid, and that doesn't even really, it can pull metals out, but then it can drop them along the way, which is why it's not one of my favorites for mercury. There are lots of other things we can do for brain inflammation. Dr. Theorides, who was also at this conference I was just at, by the way, it was the Documenting Hope Adventures in Healing conference, and parents were so happy to have been there and been learning what they were learning. Dr. Theo talked about, he developed products specifically with rutin, luteolin, and olive oil that help decrease the inflammation in the brain. And he's an expert in mast cells, and mast cells go crazy and create inflammation and rashes and allergies. And he's very, very well known for having this product that decreases the inflammation in the brain, decreases mast cell activation. If your mast cells are activated, you just have more and more and more and more inflammation. It's like turning up the volume on inflammation. So, anti-inflammatory things are great. Turmeric's anti-inflammatory. Fish oil, those good omega-3s, DHA, that's anti-inflammatory. I learned of some other compounds that are practitioner-only type things, which I'll be talking about in the future. I need to learn more about them before I bring them to you, but things that are having incredible, amazing results with kids. But really what I want to encourage you to do is not just to blindly go out and get the Dr. Theo's products. His company is called Algonaut, and his product is called Neuroprotec. I want to encourage you not just to go out and get that and try it. I want to encourage you to work with somebody who can give you a well-rounded resources for holistic approach. Because if we just try one thing of magnesium and one thing of neuroprotec and one thing of fish oil, is really a shotgun approach, and it may not make a difference for your child. But if you look at the wholeness of your child, does their gut have issues? What are the toxins in the brain? What can we do? If you work with someone who knows what they're talking about, and you look at a holistic perspective, because if you give something, it could harm your child more than help. Or it could be you don't see anything because your child didn't need one thing, they needed 3 different things. So what I want to encourage you to do is at least find out from somebody who really knows, how to go about this process, how to help you. That's number 1. And number 2, the simple things you can do right now are, at the conference, someone asked this, like, what can we do? I'm so overwhelmed by all this information. Where do I start? I think where you start is 1, you reduce as many electromagnetic frequencies coming in at your child as you can. So that means, like, a simple thing for that is shutting off the Wi-Fi at night. So what these electromagnetic frequencies do is they disturb the cells and they make them leaky. And so a brain's not going to work well if we've got that going on. And they can also be interacting with heavy metals in the body. So, like a magnetism or a repulsion, or there's electromagnetic interactions with the heart, with the brain, with the rest of the body. So one super simple thing is just turning off the Wi-Fi at night. And if you give your child an iPad, don't have it connected, don't have it being emitting frequencies. Another thing is you could just get your child out on the ground, touching the ground every day, because that helps to ground out the energy that's wonky in the body. And by wonky, I mean that's disruptive and could be contributing to the brain inflammation. So touching the earth. So many kids are so much better when they touch the ground. So that's 2 things. And then the other thing is really remove gluten and dairy. If it's difficult for you, get the not so great gluten-free, dairy-free products. But I would say do that for 2 weeks and then reintroduce gluten and watch your child go crazy. Because once you clean it out of their system, most parents see changes within 2 or 3 days, because this toxic gluten is getting into their brain and contributing to the inflammation. So those are things you can do right away, even before you work with somebody, even before you do any more investigation. Are there side effects of giving zeolite drops? Persona, there may be, there may not be. It depends on your child. I think that's one of the safer things to give is zeolite drops. Because what zeolite is, it's a caged molecule, and it will hold the mercury inside the cage and then take it all the way out of the body. So the thing about zeolite is it's a long haul. You don't just give, 1 spray or 1 dropper full or whatever. And you don't start really high. You start with low amounts. But you have to do it over several months to 6 months before you may see a difference. You might see it right away, but most people don't see the effects of the zeolite right away. But you could try citrus pectin. That's also travels around the body and pulls metals out of the body, not just in the gut. Okay, I think that was the only question we had so far. Great question. Thanks for asking. And what I do want to encourage you is, if you're listening and you have any other questions, go ahead and type them in. And so I want to get back to the ABA. I want to say that I have never witnessed an ABA session in my life. I have heard from parents who tell me what it's like, so I haven't been there in person. And my understanding is try and do this, like move your hand this way or move your hand with the spoon up to your mouth, and you get a reward. So you're making neural networks, right? You're practicing the same movement, and what our brain does is it learns that movement as a habit. And sometimes we need 38 times to create a habit, whether it's positive or negative. And so eventually we can get that movement. But how robotic is it? And is it really something that comes from our cognitive thinking? That's what I question. And then why speech therapy isn't enough? It's really the same reason as why ABA isn't enough. It's like putting the roof on the house before you have the foundation and the walls and the pipes and the electricity and everything in. And before the house can function, you need all these other things to work, right? We need the brain to work before speech can come out. And oftentimes we need nutrients that are going to feed the brain. We need to pull toxins out that are creating inflammation. And we just need more. Speech therapy is a great thing once we have cleaned out the body and we've pulled toxins out. And that's a whole process in and of itself, right? It's not just let's give some zeolite and these toxins will get out. First, you need to know what's in there, because maybe you don't need to use zeolite, right? You learn about something in a Facebook group or online, and maybe your child doesn't need it. Maybe that thing is going to create a big detox reaction in your child and have them go haywire and berserk, and you're going to go, whoa, that's scary. I don't want to do that again. But really, it could be exactly what they need. It's just you have to do something else first. And that something else first, what I find is our kids are chock full of toxins in the body and they're not pooping. I say this all the time, that our kids need to poop every day. It has to be a smooth log. It has to be 1 to 4 times a day. If your child is not pooping every day, your child is constipated. If your child has little pellet poops or a lumpy, cracked poop, that your child is constipated. Even if your child has watery diarrhea type stuff, your child could still be constipated, and that's all that can get out. So first, we need to work on pooping. Absolutely important. That's the elimination. We have to be eliminating our waste every day. And then we have to go after the backlog of waste that's in the body. So we get the child pooping every day. Yay, hooray. And parents see changes just from that. They see lowered anxiety, less aggression, kind of more eye contact, more awareness. Kids are more with us, if you know what I mean. Versus in their own world, in their own space, they can have more energy. And so pooping is key. We need some liver support, and then we need to work on the lymphatics, which is the system that takes all the toxins out of the cells and puts them into the liver to detoxify, and then gets them out through the poop and through the pee, right? Our kids need to urinate as well. We pee out toxins all the time, and those are usually our heavy metals. And water-soluble toxins, or overflow from the liver, because the liver says, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do this. Here, kidneys, you take over for me. So before we go killing a bunch of microbes, like let's say we're working on the gut or we're working on microbes in the body, before we go killing a bunch of those, and before we go, okay, let's pull these toxins out of the brain, we need to have the systems of elimination open. That's the colon, that's pooping, that's the liver, we need support, that's the kidneys, we need support, and that's the lymph, so that our pipes are open and clean and we can move waste out. I talk about that all the time. I have tons of videos on that. I have tons of information on that on my website, on blogs, which is autismtransformed.com. It's transform with an ED. So I have all this outlined already that you guys can go and watch and understand why, number one, ABA speech therapy aren't the only things you can do. And it's something that comes after you've cleaned the body. Number two, you can understand what is drainage and detox. That process I just talked about is called drainage. It's actually draining the toxins out of the body through the lymph and the kidneys and the liver and the colon. And then we start detoxing, and then we're really successful in detoxing. Is that the last step? No, it's not. It's after we've started detoxing that those therapies, ABA, speech, they're going to have the most impact. So if you're listening and you're an OT, you do ABA, you help kids with speech, I really encourage you to encourage the parents that they need to work with their child's gut and they need to work with brain inflammation. They need to work with a practitioner who can get at this stuff and figure out what's in there, and help with diet changes. Now, I know that's not your job as an OT, but I was just talking to an OT this weekend, and she recognized all this stuff, and she was amazing, and she would push parents in that direction at least. So, and you could say, hey, this is going to be more effective if you do these other things, even at the same time. And then after we do the speech and ABA, and, because we have a cleaner body and the brain can work better, the neurons can connect, we still may need some support, right? Because the brain hasn't fully developed. What do we need for that? We need great fat for the body, like coconut oil and fish oil, or eating fatty fish. Salmon is really great. There's a company that I just found out about that gives good fatty oils into the brain in supplement form, and it's the exact type that helps build our cell membrane. And then Patricia Kane at Body Bio has these great oils that also build the brain. So this is why some of those protocols that have olive oil in it will work so well. Those protocols that have fish oil in it will work so well, because we're enhancing the brain. We're building up the brain, the cell membranes, how the cells communicate with each other, and making that better. But we can't really, it's hard to bring those nutrients in if we've got toxins blocking the way, and if we've got really bad fats in there, and we want to pull that stuff out first, and then, because what I found in my clinical practice is that kids were so blocked and they had so many toxins on cell membranes, and they weren't able to pull nutrients into the cells. So they may have certain test results like really high B12 floating around in their blood, and you think, oh, my child doesn't need B12 because look at all this B12. It's not getting inside the cells. So there's evidence that the nutrients are not getting in, and in order for them to get in, we need better cell membranes, and we need to pull toxins off of those. So this is why I always say the order in which we need to help heal our kids. We need to get to the root cause. We need to find out what is creating the brain inflammation and the gut inflammation. And we need to first open up the drainage, which is pooping, liver, kidney, lymph, before we can pull all those toxins out of the brain. And then we detoxify, and then that's where the value of ABA and speech comes in, and OT, where you're really going to find those changes occurring fast. I have clients who tell me that their speech therapist was so impressed with their child. They need to make new goals every time because the child hits them every time, and that's because their toxin load is lowered and they're able to connect and really think. And speech gets better. So really just want to encourage you to consider this, getting to the root cause, drainage and detox before speech and ABA. I'm here to take questions. If anybody who is live on here wants me to answer any of their questions about anything about the drainage detox, why we need to do that before speech and ABA, why speech and ABA aren't going to help your child as much as you want until after you go through this process of helping clear out the body. And I'll also be posting this as a reel, so you'll be able to refer back to it with some links back to my website where you can get more information on why you need to look at the root cause and what that will do for you. All right. So I'm not seeing any questions at the moment. Thanks everyone for joining. Whoever came on, I see your names flash by. So I appreciate your being here. I'm here every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And I will not be here on holidays or when I'm traveling. Next week is Thanksgiving. Won't be here because everyone will be hopefully in their kitchens making really yummy, wholesome food for their kids. You're so welcome, One Fit Carol. I don't see real names. I just see your handles. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here, and have a great day.